The story I made about trust is about a small language, small community in Sweden, and their struggle to try to keep the language alive by encouraging this new generation of teenagers to get interested in the language. The community is based semi-north of Sweden, and it's a small community, and about 3,000 people speak the language, and about 45 of them are teenagers. And not all of them, of course, are very interested. It's a hard task to try and get someone who's desperate to be normal and fit in to get really interested in history and tradition. But there's an interesting local initiative to give grants to these teenagers if they show some interest or if they get engaged. So it's a kind of an interesting modern twist on trying to preserve tradition. The interest really comes from the fact that I'm from there. My grandparents live and speak there and speak the language. And I think more and more, talking about society and talking about other people's lives, I needed to also come closer and go home. And it's the first time I've ever photographed in Sweden in 8 or 9 years. So I felt that it was time. I really wanted to convey the notion of mystery in this place, because not only do they have this language that it's a mystery in itself that it still remains, because no other villages around it speaks it or understands it. And it's got links to the Old Norse and the language that the Vikings used to speak. But not only that, they also have a longer history of mystery. The big witch hunts in the 1600s began in this place, and there were, executions of women, the first ones in Sweden, and then it spread on to Germany and America. So it's an important place for Sweden, but a very small and forgotten place. And today, it's a very interesting, quirky place for other reasons as well. They have a very big tradition of driving American cars, and it's not very Scandinavian per se visually. It's got an odd, different take on Scandinavia that I was very drawn to. And the connection with the theme trust is really about the interconnection between the generations and the older generation investing and entrusting the younger generation to keep this language going. And they're doing this in a very interesting way, you could say, through these sponsorships or the money that they are giving. I think photography is taking me many places. It's made me move to France, it made me move to the UK recently, and I've traveled the world thanks to photography. But really what is the key interest for me is the West and stories where I live. And then the subject matter and the passion that comes with that is in sociology, really. And I use sociology as not necessarily to try and find a rational truth or to try and explain things, but more to think of photography as a tool to engage in the wider process about society. So it's become very useful. It's a very good combination, the visual photography and the sociology. So you can have the subject matter and the backstory, but yet you're not just the one who stands beside and observes, but you're also in it, because I'm in the pictures, I choose the frames, I decide, I make the decisions, I choose my subjects. So I become very much part of what I photograph. I know that I want to keep photographing this region, and I'm also engaged in, I found separate from my piece, I found an interesting archive from another photographer who lived in the region 100 years ago. And so I'm planning to pursue the project, and I think it will take a little bit of extra time, but it will be worth it.